Maybe we will try to start. Your Excellencies, dear guests, I congratulate everyone to the annual commemoration of the victory in Orsha battle in Vilnius, which is dedicated to remembering the victory of our ancestors against the tyranny of Moscow and to review the ongoing struggle of the freedom of our nations in the present. So let me invite the Colonel Gintaras Koryzna, head of the Department of Strategic Communications of Lithuanian Armed Forces, for a welcome speech.
Your Excellencies, ambassadors, dear guests, participants, on behalf of the Chief of Armed Forces, I would like to welcome all of you, all the participants, presenters, and the guests of the conference. Today we commemorate and celebrate the great victory of at the Battle of Orsha, where our nations together stopped the invasion of the Grand Duchy of Moscow. The victory is important today as well. The victory showed us that our nations together can overcome any aggression, even if the enemy is much bigger than we expected. And always our competition between us, some disputes and disagreements between us, always is a victory of our enemies. The good cooperation is the very good sign for our opponents that we are very strong together. Our opponents always try to push us, try to collide us, and in order to achieve their goals. Therefore, let us remain together. Let us remain united in pursuit of common goals and focus on common enemy. So, I wish you very good and interesting discussions during conference, and have a nice time. Thank you very much.
So I would like to invite Her Excellency Urszula Doroszewska, Ambassador of Republic of Poland to the Republic of Lithuania.
Honorable Generals, my friend, Excellency Ambassador of Ukraine, dear guests. About the Battle of Orsha, I would like to recommend you a visit to the National Museum in Warsaw to see 16th century Kranach-style painting depicting an epic battle between heavily armored knights and oriental-looking buried warriors. Let it take a closer look at it. Can you spot an odd-looking person sitting at the riverbank with his right hand raised as he's looking through a telescope? Who is he? Is he a spy? What is he doing in the head of the battle? Nowadays, all historians are fairly sure this was the author of the painting himself, Hans Krell, the court artist of Louis II of Jagiellons, who most likely personally had taken part in this battle. In which role, we don't know. We may see he is gaining a right perspective to create an iconic image of the Battle of Orsha that forever more than 5 centuries will grasp countless hearts and minds. The Battle of Orsha is one of many Polish, Lithuanian and Ukrainian victories to help it create a strong historical bond between our 3 nations. The main lesson coming out of this great event is well known both for us and our adversaries. However, let me say it out loud again. When we unite, when we join forces, then we are able to overcome even greater threats and obstacles. When we are together, we are destined to win. No wonder we reached out to our common history to create a contemporary format of cooperation, the Lublin Triangle. Almost exactly 2 months ago, ministers of foreign affairs of Poland, Lithuania and Ukraine signed a joint plan of cooperation within the triangle, covering many fields, including strategic communication and countering hybrid threats. Just like Krell on the painting, we are gaining the right perspective to paint a better picture of what is going on, a task especially important in the face of the hybrid threat posed by Lukashenko regime and its patron state. However, we can draw even more inspiration from the Battle of Orsha. According to some sources, the white, red, white colors of Free Belarus were used for the first time by our regiments during the battle. History loves such coincidences, but I personally believe it was destiny. Our common destiny to be together, unite, and join forces to overcome any obstacles we are facing. Thank you, and let me wish you a fruitful conference.
Thank you. Let me invite His Excellency Volodymyr Yatsenkivsky, Ambassador of Ukraine in the Republic of Lithuania.
Dear friends, wielce szanowna Pani Ambassador, droga Pani Urszula, ladies and gentlemen, let me first of all express my sincere gratitude to organize this conference for the invitation to participate in it. It is a big honor for me, and it's a big pleasure to see all of you again and welcome you. For all of us, this date is full of huge historical value and is a reason to remember another page of the glorious history of our common struggle for the future of Europe. Many centuries ago, our nations stopped Maskvos expansion at the Battle of Orsha, destroyed its plans to remake the map of Europe. A son of Ukrainian nation, a representative of an old Ukrainian family from Volyn, great hetman of Lithuania Konstantinas Ostrogiškis, became the symbol of our victory over the enemy from the east and the symbol of our centuries-old friendship and brotherhood. The name and deeds of Konstantinas Ostrogiškis belong to our common historical heritage and our nation's treasure. Today, as in the past, we are united by a common history of the heroic struggle for independence and freedom. Today, the Republic of Lithuania, the Republic of Poland, stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine in struggle and defense of democracy and human dignity, together with the whole civilized world. The lessons of history once again provide us, as the descendants, with the message, only being solidary, we can defeat our enemy. The strategic partnership of our nations and our states has been successfully tested by the history that the Ukrainians, Lithuanians, and Poles have been creating together throughout the centuries. Orsha mus moko, Mes visada laimime, kai kartu kovojame už bendrus idealus. Kartu iki pergalės. My zawsze zwyciężymy, kiedy jesteśmy razem. Kiedy walczymy za nasze wspólne ideały. And good luck, and I'm absolutely sure that it will be very important, I will stress again, discussion and exchange of views. Thank you.
Thank you. Any historical lesson is that important, how we can familiarize it to the present situation. Our conference will be dedicated to the present battles with Moscow in the modern way. The first part, the legacy of Battle of Orsha in a vanguard of propaganda and disinformation. Let me invite the moderator of a discussion, Simona Merkinaitė. Please take your place. And also honorable speakers, Margarita Šešelgytė, Viktor Denisenko, and Mikhailo Makaruk. Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished guests, Your Excellencies. It's a pleasure to open this conference on the legacy of the Battle of Orsha. It reminds us, more than 500 years later, about our unchanging political realities. We were battling our neighbor who was a political adversary, and seems like that doesn't change, because today, while there is no war, thankfully, in Lithuania, but we talk a lot about the propaganda war, about cyber attacks, about battles that happen in the informational sphere, and is a battle for the minds and the hearts of the people. It also reminds us how important the unity is. Lithuania and Poland fought the Muscovites, and today we are, of course, proud and lucky to be part also of the European Union and NATO, who is our partner. However, there's a lot of challenges, and in the last year, those challenges only increased with the COVID epidemic, global epidemic, and also with the happenings in Belarus, right on our border. And so we can talk not only about the misinformation and propaganda from Russia, but also now have to deal also with the propaganda and misinformation on the border from the side of Belarus. So I would like to welcome our speakers, a little bit of information how we will proceed. So I will give all our speakers 5 to 7 minutes to make their initial remarks about the state of warfare, mainly informational warfare. And then we will have a short discussion, reflection on those remarks for around half an hour, and then we will open the floor for questions. So please keep in mind that you will have the opportunity to participate. And now, my distinguished pleasure to give the floor to Margarita Šešelgytė. I'm very happy to be moderating this session with the director of my alma mater. So, Margarita, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Simona. Distinguished What is the protocol? Should I take the mask or should I keep it? Okay. I can take it. Okay. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, alumni, it's a great pleasure to be here and to talk about the topic which is very important for Lithuania. And I just remember one episode when I read about the Battle of Aushra, that how it started, that Grand Duchess Elena, she was detained, and that was the reason to raise the questions about the mishandling Orthodox community in Lithuania. And the whole battle had this information narrative that Grand Duchy of Lithuania was not behaving well with the Orthodox community, and then we have to protect them. And this reminds me of the situation that we're facing today, when Russia is talking a lot about the compatriots and trying to protect its compatriots all over the region, in particular in the countries where the Russian communities are big. So as we can see, the time's running, the time's changing, but some things remain the same. And in every battle, in every war, there is also the information component. When I'm talking about the information component, I have to probably emphasize why it is so important, in particular in the case of Lithuania, and not only Lithuania, but also probably other Baltic states and other states in the region. We are small states, and for each small state, one of the major pillars for its survival, it's the societal security, the security of its identity, of who we are, because it maintains the unity and it helps us to resist the threats from abroad and not to succumb to these threats. And identity is a very complicated subject because it's how we feel and what narrative we have about ourselves. So we can have a lot of narratives, who we are. We can say that we are successful democracy, which managed to reestablish our independence and join the transatlantic community, and our economy is flourishing, and our society is happy. But we can also have alternative narratives, which would say, okay, Lithuanians do not trust its political system, which is in a way true, because the trust in the political parties a couple of years ago was only 6%. We don't trust our government, so probably our government is not democratic. And we are hearing these narratives very extensively, in particular during this situation that we're facing throughout pandemic. And we can also tell the story that Lithuania throughout the history has been victorious. We have won a lot of battles. We had a big country, and that reinforces our identity. But we can also talk about the losses that we have. One thing, for instance, which distinguishes how Lithuania thinks about the end of Second World War and how Finland thinks about Second World War, that for us it was a major loss, but for Finland, they were the winners, although they are also a small country, and it changes their attitude vis-a-vis Russia, what are their relations with Russia. So these narratives are very important, and the importance of these narratives are coming to our attention more and more with the development of modern technologies. because it becomes easier to reach the society directly, not through the media, which have editors, not through the certain, interference operations, but you just post the things on the social media, and you have followers, you have certain bubbles, and you spread information, you spread fake information. So this is the one thing which makes these operations very aggressive and dangerous at the moment. And another factor which influences the situation that we're facing today is in general, the feelings of anxiety, mistrust in the society, which have been raised during the COVID situation. People are not happy, people are scared, people sit at home, people watch TV, people browse the internet sites, and that enables the enemies or rivalries to also place certain narratives and try to reconvince the society to question their loyalties to the state and to question their narratives about being a successful country. So I think that it is very important to celebrate victories for a small country, to have this victorious narrative. And I think that the Battle of Orsha is one of these narratives, of one of these stories, which should become more important in the narrative that we tell about ourselves. We won. In our relations with Russia, it has not always been that we were losing. So there were some victorious times. So I'm happy that I'm participating in this event and that we will be having more probably discussions on the importance of this battle for Lithuanian narrative as a successful country. Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. Viktoras?
Dear friends, I totally agree with Margarita that victories matters, because we could see how Moscow using, for example, victory in World War II or victory in Great Patriotic War, that Moscow talking about. And I agree that we should have our own narratives. But in my introduction, I maybe will talk more about broader topic of information security and information warfare. Already 26 years ago, in 1995, American scientist Martin Liebeke published a study what information warfare is. Or what is information warfare. And it's quite interesting book, because in 1995 Liebeke tried to imagine how information warfare will look like in near future, and which elements will be implemented in this information warfare. So I could congratulate you, we are living in future which Liebeke tried to predict. Because today information warfare, information aggression is part of our reality, and it's not our choice, but we should react. Yeah? If Kremlin propaganda attacking our information space, we could not ignore it. And another thing, that today we're living in a global world, and it's another important topic, how to protect our information space, because really, today we have internet, and in internet no national borders, in fact. Even language not preventing information. We have Google Translator. Yeah? So it's a big big challenge for every country. I think so, because today we're talking about propaganda narratives or trolls activities, bot activities, and another harmful information activities, not only in Lithuania, in Baltic states, in Ukraine or in Poland. We could remember the problem of interference to presidential elections in United States. So problem is global already. And maybe it's not so bad, because now our partners in Western Europe, in the US, they also recognizing that this problem exists. Because I remember before Crimea, before 2013, quite often this view from our partners was that, okay, yeah, propaganda maybe exists, but maybe it's not so harmful, and maybe you are looking to Kremlin in quite a wrong way, because Russia not Soviet Union anymore, and so on and so on. But unfortunately, we in region, we need Crimea, we need Donbass to explain or to show what really happens in our region, and not only in our region, but globally. So my conclusion is that information warfare is reality, propaganda is our reality, and propaganda challenge matters, because sometimes people thinking that, okay, propaganda, it's not harmful because it's about information, propaganda not killing people, but I think that it's killing people. And we could find historical examples, we could find not historical examples, and I think that part of responsibility for victims of conflict in Ukraine and Donbass, propaganda should take this responsibility too.
Mikhail?
Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Michael. And first of all, I want to say that it's a big honor to me to present the knowledges and some experience of our team, the international volunteer community in Foreign Nepal, for you. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, pani ta panove, let's speak, as they say, one Russian politic from my heart. Yeah? It's not my first visit in your country, and this date, as for me, it's a little holiday for my family. I try to explain you. All men from my family, from grandfather to grandfather, are from the little city Ostrig in Rivne regions, which was the residence of the great lord of Konstantin Ostrowski. And our family house, it's not far from his castle. It's not my first visit to Lithuania, and I wanted to retell my opinion about your mistakes in the information war. I think it's not maybe good to retell about your mistakes in your country, but you know, every time which I come, I try to see your TV and sometimes to read your internet sites, different sites, because some part of you reads only the patriotic or normal press. Yeah, if you speak about the people, they read everything they want. First of all, I wanted to say that the first narrative which Russians use very good, it calls no names. I try to explain to you. The first non-linear or hybrid war, which Russians use their power and activity, was Transnistria. And different groups of the KGB forces, army forces, are going there, and they are called Cossacks or volunteers, добровольцы Приднестровья. And it was the real first hybrid operation of Russia. In Georgia, first war, it was also волонтеры, и как они называли, добровольцы Абхазии. In the second Georgia war, in 2008, it was the миротворцы. But it was not Peace Forces Brigade, which has the Russian in the United Forces. It was the also aviation brigades, we know about this, but it's called миротворцы. And every world press say миротворцы. Every world press and your press said in Transnistria, and nowadays said добровольцы. When it became Crimea, it was the вежливые люди. In Donbass, it's green people, or зеленые человечки, and nowadays also добровольцы. And these narratives have one good opinion for Russians. It's no name. There are no names, surnames, which brigades they came, from what cities they came, what the military units, what the military position, what the military profession. But it's professional units. And these no names, they activity very closely. Nowadays, they use another type of power. We say that the private military companies, you know only one, Wagner's group. But I'll tell you the great mistakes of all TV channels and sites. There are no private military company named Wagner nowadays. And when we saw the document of official document from the Organization of United Nations, where they saw PVK Wagner, it's not struggle because they use this narrative everywhere. Nowadays, it is community of different groups from the GRU forces and FSB forces. First of all, first Wagner group was the group for FSB line, which very closely works from the 2009 in Zimbabwe. They protect the mines, almaz mines, and they go to Russia. Russia gives there some refiles, old refiles, including the PPSH, Mosin, and sometimes Kalashnikov refiles. Nowadays, these groups, we research in such countries as Venezuela, Nicaragua, Yemen, Syria, Ukraine, Donbass, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and different groups of African countries, such as Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Mali, Chad, Zimbabwe, Angola, and also it's very good in Egypt and Libya. We know about this. But the narrative that it's only one Wagner group are using in world press and some famous press such as Washington Post, also your media using it. And we want to say that these narratives are going from the sometimes, from non-good words from official Russia persons. Then official Russia person says it's mistakes, and all media thinks it's good. They make mistakes, that's the right information, we will publish it everywhere they want. That's why I think that when we make these different fact-checkings, and it's very popular nowadays, and to make some fact-checking information, you must understand that the different groups of Russia forces use these narratives and use this against you. Because when we begin identification some types, we have no names, because we have understand who is this. Nowadays, the Wagner Group have only one opinion, is a private military company, non-official troops of GRU or FSB. And it's our own mistake. Thank you for your attention, and the more detailly and more deeper, I will tell you another part about these narratives. Thanks.
Thank you so much for this perspective. So I want to start with the question right away about the battle lines in this propaganda war. Margarita, for example, you talked a lot about how we can draw it between the democracies and autocracies. So it's not only Russia, so the threat comes not only from Russia, but from other autocracies, mainly China. So my question is then, and of course democracies are more receptive to propaganda and misinformation because we live in a free society. So what should be the rules of conduct for us? How democracies should, I don't know, have the rules for themselves to fight in this unequal battle when the adversary can lie and can oppress the people who talk the truth. We cannot do that. So what would be the rules for conduct for us?
So that's me. Okay, thank you, Simona, indeed very much for this question. It's a very great question, but also a very broad question. What we are seeing today is, I would say, a bit shaky international order that we were used to live, international order, which has been based on the values of liberal democracy, and with the US retreat under Trump, and in general, the changing focus mostly to Asia, we are facing turbulence in certain regions and rising powers as China or revisionist powers as Russia, trying to grab as much influence as they are capable at the moment. And we're not talking today a lot about conventional warfare because it's costly, it's uncomfortable. So the war is extending or entering the information dimension or cyber dimension. And we can already see very active battles over the narratives and battles also on the cyberspace between the democracies and autocracies. US President Biden, in his doctrine, has been emphasizing this necessity to unite the joint front of the world democracies to sustain the existing international order, or to change this order, but this order would be based on the values which are important for us: freedom, democracy, political representation, ability to choose, no matter if you're a big state or a small state. And these ideas, these narratives are not liked by the autocracies like China, Russia, Belarus. So there are a lot of narrative battles in the internet, in the social media, and these battles, the problem is that these battles are being transferred on onto the national arena, and when we are facing and we're talking about these cultural wars, that there are a number at the moment of these wars in Lithuania. These wars are also the battles between the democratic, progressive values and autocratic, as they call it, for instance, as Putin calls them, traditional values, which probably does not have anything to do with the tradition as such, but just the values which are reflecting the ideas of the autocracy. So it is very important, first of all, to understand and to see these battles and not jump into the battle just for the sake of having this battle, but understand what's lying behind. Because what I've seen throughout this, COVID pandemic in general, the society is very anxious. There is a lot of anxiety about the future, about the uncertainty, and you can easily, manipulate these feelings, these emotions of the society, trying to search for the political dividends. And the politicians, some of the politicians, which could be called populist politicians, they are participating in these battles. But also, maybe they are realizing, maybe they are not realizing, they might be triggered by, or they might participate in the battles which are brought to us from abroad, namely from these authoritarian countries. So first of all, it's very important to recognize what are these battles and who is who. And I think that the role of the media here becomes very important. I think it's very good that the media is writing about these things, exposing these things. I can mention LRT as a very good example, how they were writing about the protests in Lithuania in front of Seimas, about the riots, and naming the real culprits behind these riots. So it is very important. But as you very rightly mentioned, democracies are prone to these attacks. They are more vulnerable than autocracies because they are closed. They can detain the people. They can, change the laws, and, you can accuse the person for making treason and say that it's dangerous, so we are putting him into prison. All sorts of, or probably, just to restrict the use of the internet. So democracies do not have it. So it's a long battle. It takes a long time. First of all, recognition of these cultural wars, these battles, very strong media, and education. I know that, it doesn't come over the night, but investing in the education, promoting critical mindset is critical for the democracies to withstand these information attacks. Because without that, the society being approached directly, you cannot control the society and the choices that they make. You have to give the instruments for the society to control themselves, to recognize these attacks, to take premeditated and rationalized decisions, and not to get involved in these battles. So that's a long time and very expensive recipe.
Okay, I will not say nothing new, I think so. In my book about propaganda, which published this year in Vilnius University, I tried to present a potential model for resilience to society, resilience to disinformation and propaganda. And in this model is, in fact, two pillars, which Margarita already mentioned. It's quality media on one side, and in fact NGO sector, which could help improve media literacy in society on another part of model. And in fact answer is easy and not easy in same time. It's easy because we could say that if we have critical thinking civil society in Lithuania, everything will be fine, because people could recognize where is propaganda, where is disinformation, people using different sources of information, people knows which media is have quality, which not, which is pseudo media like Sputnik or Bolt News or so on. And in fact, society have this immunity to disinformation in natural way. But it's not easy answer, because such kind of society, it's a goal which hard to achieve. unfortunately hard to achieve. And I agree that it should be like a permanent work with society, educating people, explaining what propaganda is, what disinformation is, what misinformation is. And this work should do not only authorities, but also NGO sector, media, and so on. So we have answer, but it's not best as usual.
It's working? You okay? You know, I think that you speak only about according the democratic institution, yeah? But you don't use your democratic institution as a weapon. You wanted to make in informational real war, non-war methods. You say both about this. It's a mistake, I think. One famous Ukrainian writer, Anton Pavlovich Chekhov, which was born in Ukrainian city Taganrog, say how to live and what you must do. How to live, you Rachel, and what is do. According to any democratic society, it's live according a basic law, which is called constitution. Every constitution of Ukraine, Lithuania said that the most important thing in life of every citizen is the defense of our country. Such abstract, yes, in your constitution, like in ours. But when we keep the clever guys, which go as the voices of people in our parliaments, and they make the laws according to the constitution. I think that not good, but very professional will be a democratic way to delete and to destroy such propaganda media according to the laws. After the Second World War, very democratic states like France, Great Britain, also it was Sweden, they made a law about the destroying and about against the collaboration with enemy. It was real laws. Nowadays, many world experts say that there are such types of collaboration is military, economical, humanitarian, science, diplomacy, and and intelligence collaboration. The humanitarian collaboration is one of most important part in the hybrid or non-linear wars nowadays. If nowadays it will be low, according then that there will be some part of humanitarian collaboration, you can to destroy the enemy by the democratic institutions. I think so, because the law is law. Thanks.
Thank you. So I would encourage everybody to think of their questions, and while you prepare them, I would just would like to ask, before that, one last question maybe. I also think if we talk about the changes from, you mentioned the end of the Second World War and the changes in propaganda in 20th century, for example, the USSR had propaganda was based around ideology. Today, people who, especially historians who have studied the 20th century, such as Timothy Snyder or Anne Applebaum, they talk about the change in the propaganda coming from Russia, meaning that they now don't have the ideology they want to export. They just want to sow as much doubt and as much polarization inside the societies as possible. So my question is then, how it's easier to talk, and we talked a little bit about how to recognize propaganda. It's something that comes from the outside. But what Russia is doing now is they just fuel the natural polarizations between narratives and identities that are present in our society. So the question is then, for example, you, Victor, has mentioned the global war of propaganda and mentioned US. And when we think about US, the same thing happens there. The people say, we don't care about democracy, we just want our side to win. So how do we respond to that, and how do we fight the propaganda that comes from us, from within?
Okay, my name was mentioned, so I will start. In my answer, I won't maybe partly react to my colleague, some findings on some about our mistakes. The problem is, maybe not say problem, if we will play in using such rules as Kremlin playing, we will lose, because Kremlin is much more strong in these rules. Also, when we're talking about, for example, differences between Soviet time propaganda or propaganda of period of Cold War and modern Kremlin propaganda, it's not my idea. Peter Pomerantsev from United Kingdom, he wrote that in fact main difference is that in Soviet time it was like a battle between ideologies, because it's communism in Soviet Union, okay, it's liberal democracy in US and Western Europe, it's free market versus planning market, so on and so on. It was ideological battle. And by Peter Pomerantsev, today Kremlin have any original ideology as in Soviet time. And what Kremlin propaganda tried to do, it's made kind of information chaos. When it's not, you could not be sure which is true, which is lie. And because truth, why truth matters? Because the truth is like a pillar, which we could say, okay, this is true, this is lie, this is not true, this is fake news. But if you could not recognize where is truth, where is not, where is fake news, where real news, you losing your psychological pillars. And in this condition, propaganda could put you to every side, where they want. So we could not answer to propaganda by propaganda. Because if we will use rules, principles of propaganda, of state propaganda, we will just grow up number of fakes. But I agree that we should have like our own narratives, our own like quality facts, and we could say, look, we know that this is true. And for example, I agree that we should say that, okay, green man's, it's not green man's, it's not no name. It's in Crimea, it's GRU Special Forces, I think so. No, you could clarify more. So, but main conclusion, yes, it's hard battle, of course.
Every hybrid war, it's the main word, it's a war. Every war has the planning, strategical, operational, and tactical levels. Every propaganda builds according to these rules. When we saw and hear propaganda in our countries, it's only operational unit, an operational part of this plan. If we wanted to break it, we must to learn according to this rule what is the strategical plan and what they wanted to do. If you will be planned destroy the operational or tactical level of this operation, you don't take your target, because you must to break the strategical level in this part. That's why I think if we wanted to make a victory in this game, we must to have such institution who will be planned what they want to do on the strategical level. And it can be only cooperation of with the different intelligence agency, not government. It can be according to the government. About the no name. Every military operation which has no names, according to the Geneva Conference, it's the breaking of law, international law. And according to this law, it have no time to be cancelled. When you identify this military man and identify his name, surname, his military rank and operation unit, he can be captured and he go to international court. Russian is very afraid these things, very afraid. That's why they wanted to break such Ukrainian projects such Inform Napalm or Mirotvorets Center, because they're afraid of these things. If you make the identification of your who planned strategic level regarding the propaganda skills, you can break this operation. I think it's my personal opinion. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
So, hello, my name is Adam Ruzevich. Thank you very much for your wonderful remarks. I have one question, and I would like to hear your perspective. In your mind, how we can protect our own population, our own people from disinformation, propaganda attacks, as those attacks usually are very thoughtfully planned. They're concentrated on one group of people based on their nationality, maybe ethnicity, their religious or other socio-economical aspects. So how we can protect those people that are belonging to our demos? Thank you very much.
Okay, so my personal opinion, we can't do it. It's impossible nowadays, because we have no such money resources and other type of resources. We live in democratic society. We could not to block different types of media. We cannot to block different political parties. We cannot to block different political persons, pro-Russian persons, because it's not good according to the law. We cannot to kill or destroy them. Nowadays, our enemy use these resources and such instruments which we couldn't use, according to our constitutional levels and according to our laws. That's why we can be like doctors. We can only to make some operation after they make their propaganda operations nowadays. It's, I say, according to our experience, which is 8 years in Ukraine. You couldn't to protect your, but you could minimize the risks of this propaganda nowadays.
In fact, I agree that we could not protect 100%, and maybe 50% also not. Two things, I think. So one, it's like a prevention. Prevention means this media literacy, to try and improve in general media literacy and knowledge about media literacy in society. It's like it's prevention and reaction. Debunk of narratives show how propaganda is made and which parts of lies it's using in this all construction.
Yeah. So I'd like to look at this issue a bit from the probably a bit broader perspective. Yes, you cannot eliminate it 100%. It is important to debunk fake news. I think that many organizations are doing a very good job. But also it comes to the society, emotions within the society, because, well, after all, the ultimate goal is to cause the divisions in the society, and by these divisions cause probably political instability, probably change of the regime, change of the political situation. So I think that at the end of the day we have to work with the society, and when it comes to the propaganda and disinformation, we have to be very clear what are our vulnerabilities. What divisions, where societal divisions lie? Is it inequality of income? Is it these traditional values against the progressive values? Is it educated versus non-educated people? Every country, every society has a number of quite vulnerable questions related to the history, and Lithuania is not the exception. And every time those issues being raised, there is a huge division within the society, which might evolve into something more serious. So I think that at some point we have to register these vulnerabilities quite meticulously and talk over certain questions which are, although are very, very vulnerable for us and very divisive for us, but only by talking you can approach these two positions and have more or less common narrative, which would be not so easy to use against you by the external forces. So society and the societal divisions are, I think, the most important issue in battling the information warfare, because it's just a tool. The goal is not to invoke the information operation. It has the tool to cause political instability, to question the loyalty of the society. So we have to know where are our vulnerabilities and work with them.
Yes, just shortly, do you think there is a need for united action on the European level, from the European Union, for example? And how do we respond then when in the member countries like Poland and Hungary, for example, even some of the historians are harassed who talk about the painful past? Anyone?
We have a case about this. In 2016, Ukrainian Cyber Alliance gets the email of one famous person in Belarus. His name is Konstantin Usovsky. He is one of the founder of the Institute of the Independent States by Mr. Zatulin in Russia. And he makes the pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian action, and he was the man who takes the budget of this on territory of Poland and anti-Poland actions in territory of Ukraine. And in these dams of emails, there are basic rules how they use the political structure, what types of political structures they use in European countries, and how they use. But it's a very long discussion, very long. This Institute of Zatulin learn different political structures, different political views of all Europe, according to your level. And they try to make such separate state like DNR and LNR in Ukraine, in Poland, in Lithuania, in Belarus, and they make the heraldic also nowadays. They make their own currency, and they have a very good budget for their ideas.
on the European Union level, I think that some things have already been done, like ensuring strategic communication, the cell that has been planted in order to fight the information operations is one thing, promoting European values vis-a-vis authoritarian values, democratic values is another thing. And I think that, European resources could be used more because European Union has money and has the very wide box of tools to address information operations. But the main problem with the European Union is that it is not a state. It is 27 countries which have very different opinion vis-a-vis Russia and what's happening there and how dangerous it is and how much resources and European attention should go to that direction. So I think that, yes, it is important, but in general, when it comes to the societal security, the best efforts, the most effective efforts are on the ground in a particular country. Of course, we can ask for certain resources from outside, but other countries, other international organizations do not have this power to convince our society. They do not know what are the divisions. They do not have this deep knowledge, where these divisions begin and how to heal them, how to ensure that people would sit together and talk, and what are the triggers. So probably it should be more on the European Union level, but it's not the solution. Solution lies within the nation states, within the states.
On the European level, in fact, we have only the Strategical Communication Center, which was established after Crimea events. And maybe it's a small step, but it was an important step, because before it, as I know, on European level, it was a little regard to this challenge. But I'm also agree that maybe best thing which European Union could do, it's, I think, money, grants for maybe NGO sector in different country members who could implement some activities on national level.
Questions?
Thank you. Dalia Bankauskaitė. Appreciate discussion and triggered not questions, more thoughts and insights. I fully agree that you can't protect from propaganda, be protected from propaganda. It's the same as to be protected from life. But having said that, you have to feel secure, and security matters. You discuss narratives, and you mention narratives. My question would be then, what would be, could you enlarge, could you share your insights of common narratives? How it is important to have the identity, because narratives help to be on the same page in the perceptions, and we can talk then on the EU level, or we can talk at the national levels, but we should share certain common narratives, common stories, and that unites. Could you simulate what should be the ideal conditions, or better, not ideal, necessary conditions to encourage common narratives at the EU level and even at the level of our triangle, as we were talking, Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, Lithuania as such. So I still would love to go to this strategic level. We have to have a focus where we are heading. So just your thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, Dalia, look to me, so I could start. Yeah? I think that when we're talking about Europe or about this triangle, the strategical narratives should be linked to values. It means freedom, justice, truth. Of course, it could sound quite abstract ideas, but it's very important freedom to choose your, I don't know, way of life, because what Kremlin propaganda talking about quite often is that, look, this Western have any values, and all values of Western societies are wrong or fake or doesn't exist in fact. But if we talking about this main narrative, I think that it's quite important to talk about maybe even like a story of success, because they're independent states in any way, they're democratic states. Our economical condition of life is better than in Soviet Union. So I think this grand narrative could be kind of.
We have some system which has connection with our countries, but it's a little. Let me speak from my heart. Yeah, I have very interesting my ages when I was a student. I was those guy who all of you say that he is football hooligan or football fan. Yeah, I was a football fan of Dynamo Kyiv. But why I say it? From the old Soviet time, it was some cooperation of Ukrainian football fans and the Lithuanian football fans. Yeah, and nowadays this connection is going every time. You know, it was called as the black черный квадрат. It was the fans of Dynamo Kyiv, Karpaty Lviv, Dnipro-Dnipropetrovsk, and Žalgiris Vilnius. Every Soviet team knows about this. It was one of the most famous fan groups because they was the most friendly. Nowadays they are friendly too. There are no Žalgiris, but our guys go to your basketball team Žalgiris as the fans. Your fans, every time if there's a European match, we saw the flag of the Žalgiris football team on Dynamo sector or Karpaty Lviv. But they use one thing about their community, which are called our land, our tradition. And the tradition, it will be most graduated indicator, which means to communicate our societies and make a protection against the Russians. I give you two examples. Carol songs. There are no Russians carol songs. It's our traditions, yeah? Our kitchen, our food. When the Russians say it's a real informational war against the borscht, and that they go in UNESCO as the Ukrainian food, I hear one thing which, as for me, was something wonderful and like the Bashi tales, and I tried to retell you on the original language. Я не знаю, что борщ должен быть украинским. Вот наш кубанский борщ с пастернаком – это очень вкусно. Thanks.
Anyone else wants to respond?
Yeah, narratives and values and identity. So basically, I agree with what Viktoras was saying about the values and the importance of values. So how we define ourselves as a state, as a community, like Poland, Lithuania, and Ukraine. So do we share some values? So we have some narratives about these values. How we define ourselves as European Union. We have certain values in common. But it is that hasn't been said, so I want to also emphasize this thing. that, you know, it is also when we define our identity as we with someone, we have to define also who is the other and what values this other represent. And we have to also have narratives about that, so it is also important. Sometimes it is forgotten.
So first of all, thank you for your thoughts and interesting points. And my question is related with the information operations. And in many cases, you already indirectly touched some things from a question. So when we're talking about the disinformation and propaganda, we always try to say that we have to recognize disinformation. We have to educate our society, our people, to recognize where is the propaganda and how to build a resilient society, I would say. On the other hand, our opponents conduct offensive information operations. On our side, in NATO doctrines, EU policies, we're talking about the only defense. What do you think about the offensive information operation from our side? What would be your thoughts? Is it possibility for us to defend our values, or such kind of operations has more disadvantages or even the threat for our values? Thank you.
As I know, offensive psychological operations not, how to say, not correspond to principles of NATO, as I know. Maybe we should talk not about offensive operations, but what I want to say, when we're talking about defense, we are like quite passive. Yeah, we're reacting. We're always reacting to these offensive operations, and I totally agree that we should also be proactive, not only reacting. But this proactivity should be not offensive operation. I mentioned what I think that the biggest mistake is to answer to propaganda by propaganda, because we just we growing with uncertainty. We growing with information house which Kremlin wants. We helping Kremlin in some ways when we answering to propaganda by propaganda. I know that Ukraine have a different opinion quite often, but it's my position, in my humble opinion, how to say. But we should make active strategical communication actions. And it's also what it means. It means that we could provide information or try to provide information how free society looks like, how it works, why we think that our values, what I mentioned also, is the best, yeah, and why it's real, not fake.
Margarita.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, offensive information operations would make us look more as these others that would be playing according to their values, and we will not have any, you know, distinguishing values or distinguishing lines from the behavior that we hate so much. But when it comes to the being more proactive, I think that there were the 2 episodes in UK. I don't recall exactly when it happened, either from after, I think it was after the case of Skripal, where Theresa May said that, okay, if you are playing so harsh, so maybe we should use our offensive cyber security weapons and take some information which is very sensitive for Mr. Putin, and it's not propaganda, we're just gonna disclose this information. So I think that this is telling the truth that doesn't make us less democratic. So that could be probably the strategy.
We are now in NATO, yeah? But your army couldn't make this operation because they are in NATO. But your NGOs can make this operation. About our experience, we are made, and very quality, very good. And one of them I can tell you about the government level. It was the problem of Idel-Ural Republic. It's a little republic, not little, it's more bigger than all Baltic countries, which is community of the different people who are in, and different nations who are in Russia Federation now. We call it about the Ural different nations. And our Ministry of Affairs get some people who are the authorities of this nation to the United Nations, and they give the big conference. In Ukraine, there are different conferences about the problems of Bashkiria, Tatarstan, about the Idel-Ural, about the Republic of Sakha. Russia is not state with one nation. It's different nations. Nowadays, many guys say one interesting words. The Moscow is the city when some years ago lived Russians. The big parts of the nation, the biggest parts of the nation who lives in Russia nowadays, it's as Azerbaijanians, more than 6 million people in Moscow. And we say, when we speak about the Russians, there are only 3 million official peoples are Russians and live in Moscow nowadays. And this state and Russian people is real biological, they losers in their country. Because there are many Tatars now lives, Bashkirs, and the question of their identification as a nation and the country became more stronger nowadays, and we must to help them over the world, because there are many Tatars. You have your Tatar diaspora in your country, we have also. There are many Bashkirs over the world, people of the Siberia, and it's about the public diplomacy, yeah? Non-public, excuse me, I can't speak because there are cameras. And it's about this operation.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I would continue, since we are still focusing on the side of describing the problem or the issue and admiring the issue, but as always it's effective to simulate how it looks in practice to solve this issue that exists. Narrow question, Generation Z, millennials. What we enjoy now really is the change of generations, as was 30 years ago, and those millennials are now in decision-making positions. That generation is coming to decision-making positions. They will be the leaders and the policymakers, not policy administrators, because we need policymakers. So, how do you have experience, insights on the perception of those generations? From my research, from my intercourse, exchange with those people, I see that their perceptions of threats, of security, of defense, of safety is different. It's not bad or good, it's just different, because that's their background. How to mobilize and motivate them? But that's my question. So what's your insights with the change of generations, how they would approach the security and safety issues, since disinformation is an integral part and a threat to security and safety?
I understand your question very well, because I have 4-year-old son, and every day I know something wonderful, something interesting from him. It's only 4 years. But our team works there with such generation, with a different young organization. And the first rule which I understand, you must be interesting for him. Because when you speak something not interesting about something globally theory, it's not interesting for them. This population want information or some skills which they can take in this time and in this place. When you will be interesting for them, you come to have connection with them, and then you have to work together with this population. It's only one thing which I understand with them. But then I'm the another generation, which are born 2, 3, 4 years again, that's not the generation Z, yeah, that's another type of generation will be. And there will be more harder understand for us. No, we have this problem. Our grannies and granddaddies don't understand our things, what we are here, what we are reading, and what we are doing. It's a normally biological process, but you know that your granny is interesting for you, and it will be experience for you.
In fact, we have answered, because I totally agree with only one way maybe talk about this challenge for young generation. It's entertainment, kind of entertainment. And we have examples for how this media literacy already was integrated into games, for example, bad news games and other. When teenagers playing, in fact, playing a game in the internet, but they getting knowledge how disinformation works, which tricks using disinformation. So.
Yes, every generation have their own issues which interest them, and of course the ways how they digest and take the information. So the gaming, yes, it is one way. I know I also have a 13-year-old daughter, so I know how much she spends time on TikTok, which you can basically get all the answers about everything on TikTok. So that for me it seems a bit challenging, but I also realize and appreciate things that they have and we probably didn't have, because they have a lot higher level of cyber literacy than we do. And this comes also with a critical mindset related to when you look for information, you realize that there should be several sources. And also in general, the values which are important for them, and probably every generation looks at the other generation from above saying, oh, these youngsters, they don't share our values, it's a lost generation. It comes from the time of Aristotle. But they are in fact very empathetical and very sensitive towards the issues which are important for them, like climate change, like treatment of animals, like gender equality. So these things are important, and these are not bad things. This also talks about the coherence of the society, how to eliminate the divisions within society. So I have great hopes for the younger generation, and I think that they have the necessary background, but yes, I agree with Victor that if we want to attract them, so the tools probably should be a bit different.
Thank you. So we went well over the hour, so I want to ask if anybody has any more pressing questions. If not, since we started earlier, I would maybe wrap up and extend the informal communications during the coffee break, and we'll come back at 2, right? So thank you. I want to thank the panelists, and I want to thank all the participants. Thank you so much.
So please don't leave because the second part, which we will start at 14:00. So it will be not a public part, and it could be even much more interesting than the first. So we're waiting you after the coffee break.